we talked a little bit earlier about going out into the world and seeing things firsthand. So I've asked you all to come up with some particularly inspiring places that you've gone to or you might visit regularly, and that you might recommend that the guests might go and check out for some of their own inspiration. If we start with Tord, you have picked?
Yeah, the Wallace collection. When it's not a way of like not having too much stuff in my own studio, I go to somebody else's collection. So, well, one of my favourite ones is the Wallace collection, which is just on Manchester Square.
Let me just ask, how many people have been to the Wallace collection? It's just behind Selfridges, and it's an amazing collection of 15th to 18th century decorative arts and fine arts.
It's completely free to go in. Also, the special exhibitions are free. It's really an amazing place. And they have a lot of the work deals with romanticism in there. And I think there's a slide here of one of my favorite paintings in the collection, which also represents another space that I find very inspiring, which is the forest or the garden. But this particular painting, I've actually used it in my work as well when I was thinking about color for a textile collection. This textile collection, I've designed all these patterns that were very floral, nature-inspired patterns, but then I didn't want to have natural colors on them. And what happens in the Rococo and definitely in Fragonard paintings is that they first start making synthetic pigments, and you get these wonderful, very bright colors that feel very synthetic. And they do the same thing. They over-stylize nature, and then they apply this really synthetic color, and you get this really weird effect. And so I use exactly the same idea.
And I think this particular painting really captures the sense of delight and whimsy, which is a part of so much of your work. In fact, I'm sure I remember that you have designed a swing seat for Moroso many years ago. And when I saw that you picked this picture, the connection was really lovely to see.
Yeah, it's from this and from the sound, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Yes.
There's a scene with a swinging bench.
From Hitchcock to Chitty Chitty Bang Bang to Wallace collection. Find it anywhere. Thank you. The next place we've got, Claire.
I really love visiting Kew Gardens. I live back in the northwest now, so I don't get to Kew that often, but I do have kind of botanical gardens nearby. And I think I once met this illustrator, and he said he said if he gets really stuck for inspiration, then he just starts by drawing cats. And something happens that after he's drawn one or two cats, something just more happens. And I kind of feel that when I go to somewhere like Kew, that I sort of realign myself with these kind of amazing structures, that in particular in the succulent houses, and I kind of take myself back there and looking at all this, the geometry within nature is really incredible.
Have you ever nicked a cutting?
Yeah, I haven't.
Oh, thank you. With you, Aaron. Where's this?
So this is the V&A, and this is the ceramics department in the V&A. I mean, I've been predominantly throughout my career been a tableware and kitchenware designer, and so I deal with a lot of ceramics. And one of the problems with ceramics is that you are fairly limited in what you can do. So each specific factory or even country has a specific technique with bodies or with glazes. And I mean, at the V&A, you've got ceramics from all over the world, and dating back to medieval times. And it's almost like walking into the world's biggest factory. So you're not limited by what you technically know and what the factory is technically capable of. And it's every single time I go there, generally if I'm starting a project off, I will start it off, and then maybe about just before I'm finishing, I will go and visit, and it's really just to maybe tie the projects up. But it's such a wealth of information, and it's the other thing that's really nice about the V&A is it seems to deconstruct the process of actually making ceramics, and it's actually sometimes the processes that are part way through making the product that actually are much more interesting. And But I mean, also, the glass department there is amazing, and you've got sort of like glass dating back to like the 19th century, and they're sort of like really they're ridiculous and very elaborate, and you just sort of imagine the environment that they would have been using. So it's it's a fantastic space, and I think when I go there, I think it's sort of an opportunity to sort of like free myself of the constraints of my own knowledge.
And with the ceramics gallery, I think that was just reopened a few years ago,
Yes,
relaunched.
yeah.
If you haven't been, it really is a fantastic, enormous collection to go and check out. The next slide we have is Simon's. I've been there. Very inspiring place.
Oh, it is. Yeah, I mean, this was actually taken in 1944. It's the Urquhart factory. I've chosen it because it's a factory, but anywhere where people make things is a source of inspiration for me. Whether it's a one-man band workshop or a big factory, and I've been lucky enough to travel to factories all around the world, and there is a common. There's a connection with people that make things. There's, language isn't really a barrier. But why I particularly picked this factory was because this was really the first factory in the UK that productionized the craft element, and that it really fascinates me because the people that made the machines that make these chairs had to understand the material, the process, and what makes a craft element a craft element, and that to me is, it's just fantastic.
The big development with Urquhart was the steam bending the wood, wasn't it? Which is
yes,
so groundbreaking at the time.
And producing chairs at a price that people could afford, in a way that didn't take away what was intrinsically lovely about the handmade chairs that preceded it. And that whole thing, the whole thing of making, if I am teaching students, I say, get off the bloody computer and get into the workshop. Just learn through manipulation.
So when you visit a factory now, is part of the excitement that you're seeing techniques that you may not have seen before, which will then inspire new ideas for new pieces, or is it the energy?
It's the whole thing. It's everything, as you say. It's working with people that have a passion for making things, whether it's with a machine. A 5-axis CNC router is only as good as the person that's operating it. So that person needs to understand the material, the way things go together. So it's a tool, the same as a chisel or a hand plane was a tool for someone 2 years ago, revolutionary as it was then. It's just a step on.
I think it's very interesting to see the different spaces that you've picked. Sarah, I wonder how inspiring you would find it. We should go back again, sorry. One more, how inspiring you would find it. And forward one. Thank you. Visiting the Urquhart factory for your work.
I find it very inspiring, but I mean, making is absolutely intriguing and wonderful, and what you can and can't, and then when they say you can't do that, that's when you start to think, well, I can.
Yes,
exactly. This is the way.
Exactly.
And that's the most exciting bit of it, really, in a way. But it is wonderful to see things made and being made and worked out how, and the skill and all of that. Yes, it would be inspiring.
And people's love of making things.
It's a great place to visit.
It rubs off.
Yes.
And George, do you think that you'd be able to find your own inspiration somewhere like this? A sense of, I can't think of something much more different to the Wallace collection than...
No, it's essential to go and understand how things are made. If you don't know how things are made, you can fantasize as much as you want, but you won't be able to realise it. It's the absolute foundation of what we do.
So there's something that when we spoke, you described yourself as a pragmatic designer, one who would not wax lyrical about a walk on the beach, which I think leads us really nicely to Sarah's inspirational place. Which
Don't worry, I'll be set up.
We both are.
It's a painting of yours, isn't it?
It is a little
what
tiny
can you tell us
painting.
about the location?
Oh, well, there's a little painting I did for my blog when I was remembering a moment on a beach, and that particular moment was a difficult summer when some people died, and I can remember the fire going out and the sun going down and me being on the beach and that just seemed a very good end to those particular things. But I think what I love about the beach is that it's neither here nor there. You know, you're not in the water and you're not really on the land. And I think the same thing about a journey. You know, I get a lot of my ideas on journeys because I'm free, actually. I'm not in a place.
Yeah.
I also make some of the very difficult phone calls on stations or journeys because I'm not at home, so it's not going to be sullied.
Yeah.
Home isn't sullied. And I think the in-between place is a very great place to have thoughts and ideas which don't come to you anywhere else because they're not all tied up.
Yeah.
With the washing up or
I
the
totally
letters.
relate to that. I mean,
Yeah.
you
The
can put me on a
envelopes.
plane with nobody else.
Yes.
Let me fly off somewhere far away.
Yes.
And it's that space
It's
before you
actually
get there.
It's the journey that's so
Mental
such a
space.
fantastic time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that sort of represents that sort of almost, you know, being there and not being there.
Yeah.
We've got one more here. Polly, this is yours.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know what inspiration's going to come out of this yet. I mean, I'm storing it up for something. It's a museum I've never been to. Paris is stuffed with tiny little amazing museums, and a friend took me there this very recently, just a few weeks ago, and it is the most beautiful building, and the colour in it, and the tones of colour, all very French. So it's
Which
all
museum
these
is
tones
this?
of neutral. It's in the zoological gardens where the zoo is, and it's a dinosaur house, and it must have been built in the 20s or 30s, I would have thought, maybe the 30s. And all the dinosaurs are all facing in one direction. So it feels like they're all about to do a massive runner and get out. It's absolutely extraordinary. Everything's going in one direction. I mean, but what was amazing about it was the colour and the tones of all of these tones of neutral, and then all the shapes of the bones and lots of aconites and ammonites, and I know that that's all now stored up. I mean, I can sort of feel a tones of bones trend coming soon, you know, because that's what you do. You store it up. You don't think this is going to be something.
Yeah.
But I think these little museums that aren't necessarily totally related to what you do often provide you with something.
We've got a few more slides actually of yours of inspiration. So I think being the creative director of a brand like Habitat, which for so long and in so many ways influences the way that so many people live, and the greater trends within the home market. It would be very interesting to find out how you get your inspiration.
Well, this is India. So this is a tradition that they have down in the south. This is another quite recent trip where they make those patterns by hand sprinkling coloured, like coarse powder on the ground, and you have to walk through that to go into the factory, which is a terrible thing to do because someone spent hours doing it, and there it is, and you walk across it. And you tiptoe, trying not to disturb it, but the point rather is that they've made it for you, and then you sort of destroy it.
So it's very fleeting moments.
Yeah, fleeting, but it's but when you get close, it's the. I mean, what I loved about that was the quality of the colour and the shapes, and it's got a slightly sort of 60s, 70s kind of feel. I mean, you completely relate to that, Sarah. So, you know, just wonderful. And we went to 3 or 4 places, and each one had a different version of that. And I hadn't been to the south of India for a long time, and that will definitely pop up. Just wait and see.
All we get is cigarette butts and chewing gum.
No, travelling is the best thing.
Oh, now what's this?
Well, I'm also, you know, because I'm responsible for the way the shops look, as well as the design team. I'm always looking for ideas, visual ideas, visual merchandising ideas. And this was a wall. I think it was perhaps it was Eindhoven. It was one of the student shows in Milan, and it was layers and layers and layers of wallpaper that had been peeled off and off and off, and then all the wallpaper just been left in this heap. And designing wallpaper is one of my sort of bugbears at Habitat. It's just not something that comes naturally to me, so I related to that.
Frustration.
Another exhibition, a carpet exhibition last year in Paris, which was a lot of different techniques of how rugs are made, and like everyone else here, I'm fascinated by technique, and technique is often the starting point. So, you know, another thing that someone, you know, if you have a couple of hours in a city, you know, there's always something amazing to
When
see.
you see things like this, is there ever an instant, I know what that's going to be on the shop floor in 2 years' time? Because it does take that long. You know, these things.
Not really. Not really. I mean, I think you need you
Needs to
accumulate a lot, and it's very often not one image that leads to a single idea.
Yeah.
It's a whole bank of things that build up. Yeah, definitely.
I've asked each of the designers to bring. Oh, we've got one more.
You missed the sarcophagi as well. That's Julian Stair's sarcophagi, which are magical, and that the one
What
you're
is
transfixed.
this? Yes.
Well, you know, Habitat has to keep its sense of humour. We worry about getting too serious, and so if I see something that makes me smile, and I think, well, there's some that's gonna happen somewhere. That again was Eindhoven student show,
Is it okay?
and there were about 6 of them, and they were all different, and they were huge, and they were like these yetis wandering around, and they just made me laugh. And I thought, I'll just have a picture of that, and it will filter in somewhere and make me smile. So.
Yes, that's important.
Yeah.
I've asked each of the designers to bring along an object which has either inspired a design or which they're currently fascinated with, which may one day inspire a design. Tord, we can start with you. What object
Well,
brought along today?
object in a very loose way. Rocky, do you understand that?
Oh, how
Very
obedient.
tricky does. Well, for me, it's nature. It's really
Sorry, you know to stand because
okay. Well,
Oh, yeah.
nature is really my biggest inspiration, I think. So I decided to bring my dog Rocky along. Thank you.
But talking about nature, whether it's through Rocky, I mean, how do you turn this inspiration into your next product?
Well, I think not
Not
directly.
physically. It's a fur cushion.
There are quite a few dog motifs happening at the moment. It's very on trend, Tord.
Dog hair jumpers. No, we're not. No, I think in inspiration. I mean, like when we've sat here today, it's like okay, you see things and way down the line, it starts to make sense. It fits a project or something. Yeah, but
And I imagine having a dog, as with I know that your designs, you said once that your designs changed quite a bit after the birth of your daughter. Having a dog does create a sense of energy or wonderment, which will kind of eventually find its way into your work.
Oh yeah. No, also I think when you go around the city with a dog, you also become aware there's other points of view of looking at the world, like traveling the underground or something. That low eyesight perspective or something. It's quite a different thing, and I think that's quite cool as well for designers to look at things from different angles, literally.
Sarah, what have you brought today?
I brought these.
I might actually
sort of
pick that up for you and show
tray,
the audience.
It's a kind of tray. I've been to this place, which is it was called Grumpy's in Manchester, and it's kind of it's a place where they sell, for example,
Grumpy.
it's kind of weird, but it's sort of like the initials that stand for something, but they recycle sort of industrial waste. So you might get which is where the bottles are from. So it's kind of, I saw this tray of scientific bottles, and I just really like them, and I like the noise they made, and like the surface they made. And so you kind of, I keep taking them out, putting them back in. But then I've also just sort of kept collecting over in car boots these decanter lids, and I just really like the way that you get these kind of really industrial formed, and then these kind of more ornate glass objects. And I keep getting it out and putting it back again and adding more to it, but it's not, I don't know, it's sort of not become one thing yet, but it's very playful. And
But you're a designer who likes facets as well, and I can see why that would appeal to you, to your designer's eye.
And the surfaces and stuff that you can kind of create and grow, and that multiple form thing. So,
Sarah, thank you. Sarah, what have you brought today?
I've brought, talking of beaches, I brought this collection of stones,
I hold that up
Yes,
to
you
people at
can.
the back.
thank you very much, which I Yes, yes.
It's very
Quite
fetching.
nice.
Yes.
Lovely, yes, yes, yes. Which I collected with my dad, probably about, I can hardly believe this is true, 60 years ago.
Do you remember which beach you collected?
It's a pebbly beach in Dorset near Lulworth Cove. And I like it for many reasons. One of the reasons is it stayed with me for so long. I didn't ask it, it's just hung around. But when we collected it and we found the string and we strung them up as we were going along, halfway along the beach, I realised that they'd all fallen off the string. I'd lost them. And I was rather sad, and my father said, I was wearing them, like you. And he said, don't worry, they'll just be here, don't worry. And indeed, when we looked down on the ground, they were there. And I said, how did you know that? And he said, because when you lose something, you often notice it straight away, especially if you're holding it or wearing it. You perceive it, whether you know it or not. These are bloody heavy, I can tell you. Anyway, there they were, and I like that lesson, and I often think of it, and it is sometimes true.
Yeah.
It's true more than it's not true. If you lose something, you notice it quite quickly.
Unless it's your memory.
Anyway, I've never really used it for a design as such, but in fact I realised that my jacket, which I painted last year, or this year even I think, is rather like these
It is.
stones. It's all different sorts of rounds and circles and those sorts of funny shapes. And I suppose I do love that amount of variety in what we could call a circle. I know they're not circles, but
Yeah.
there's an infinite variety, and that is of course lovely.
Thank you very much. Aaron, what have you got?
The angle boys line. It's
I might hold that up.
yeah. Thank you. I don't know if it's the lamp itself or really I think maybe what it actually sort of represents. It's been a product that's been in production for the last 80 years, and as I mentioned earlier, I had a Marcus or a Portobello, and it was something that I did before I went back to university, and so it was an object that I used just to sort of strip, take them apart, and polish them, put them back together, and it was something that really sort of taught me a lot about the process of manufacturing and actually putting them together, and
Understanding how things work.
yeah, and absolutely. But I think the thing that's really sort of got me is the actual the quality of the product, and I think it's something that I want to sort of retain within my own work. But it's something that is useful, but it's also great quality. But it doesn't just maybe have my life. It will get passed along, and it gets cherished and looked after. And I think it's amazing the way that the lamp has lasted for 80 years, and it has had different incarnations of in various sort of guises. But it's now, I mean, like Kenneth Grange recently designed it, and it's almost like regressed back to really what it was originally, and so I think it's more what it represents than the actual product itself.
Yeah, and I think this longevity in design is one of the really satisfying things that differentiates fashion and product design, is that there are hopefully no real fleeting moments with these creations, but they might actually last a little bit, at least more than a season, more than a year, which is, I'm sure challenging and exciting for you. Simon, what have you got?
I've bought. It's part of a collection. I have pretty much the whole collection
It's a
at
small
home.
wooden bird goes at the back.
Designed by Lars Bella for an Italian brand called Discipline. It just makes me smile, and every time I look at the collection, I smile. And you know what better than to design something that just keeps on giving. You know, however long. You know, I'll have these forever, I think, and it'll always. You know, I just like to pick them up and.
And this collection is part of a bigger range called Return, which
That's right.
is all reclaimed wood, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So you know, it's beautiful. It's expressive. Each one is different, despite it being a production item, and that in itself fascinates me. But it's also the designer's approach. You know, it's designing something that has a craft sensibility that is mass produced, so that it's affordable. And that I find, you know, it's so smart.
Yeah.
Really clever. He's a very clever young chap.
Very much. We're nearly out of time, but there is time for any questions from the audience. If anybody would like to our designers or Polly to expand on anything they've discussed today. Now's your chance. Yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask Sarah, actually. You spoke about kind of the journey, as it were, when you're out and about and kind of receiving inspiration from the journey. I just wonder, and those in between places, I just wonder whether you prefer the kind of the design process or whether you prefer the actual finished article or if it's a mixture of both.
It's a good question. I think the process is, I suppose one does the process, and that's when you're engaged. When you've done the finished thing, you move on. So they're very different. You have a very different relationship with those things. I don't think it's a question of preference. I think they're simply different moments. When you've done it, you've done it. And if it's never quite right. You always wish something. And so luckily you get if you're lucky, you get another chance, and you maybe in another way, approach it in another way.
But a huge part of your process is painting,
Yes,
isn't it?
yes,
and that
yes.
is something that you love to do.
I do love
When
it.
we spoke on the phone,
Yes.
I think you had a paintbrush between your teeth at one point.
I was probably rattling it away in the jar. Yes, I do love the process of painting. I do love it, and that getting to the thing is that's the fun of it, really. It's the fun of it, and that's what you find out, what you explore. And sometimes you can start something sets you off. It's often happened to me. I've thought, perfect bunch of flowers, or whatever it is. I start a design with that, and in the end, that's the bit that gets chucked out because the journey's happened, and that's sort of irrelevant. It's quite a strange fact, but it's happened quite a few times.
Comes an offcut.
Yes, the thing you thought was the real thing.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question for Torts. Or actually also compliments. I bought for my first salary Midsummer Lights, and I get like always a lot of compliments about it. So that's the compliment. And I'm happy to give it now to you. But yeah. And then I was wondering, what was your inspiration for that? Was it also like the frozen Dutch flowers, or like the?
The Midsummer Night was really looking like probably lying in the grass under a tree or something, and looking up, seeing how the sunlight comes through the leaves and how each leaf is so transparent. But also, the tree organizes itself in a way that each leaf will catch the sunlight at an important time of day as well. So there's a lot of transparency when you look through a tree up. And I was fascinated by cutting paper, and I just designed postcards that was made with die cutting paper, like a big cutter. And I'd seen the machines and knew that machines have a certain size, they're quite big. So you could actually cut a whole sheet in one go, I thought if you cut so much, it becomes like lace, like textile. You could actually, once you have that bit of paper, what you can't do with normal paper, you can't pick it up in the middle and lift it up and it starts to drape like a handkerchief. But if you cut the hell out of it, like it becomes lace, it becomes like textile almost. But then I organized the pattern of the flowers and the leaves in such a way that it actually started to drape.
Yeah, because I'm draping it around. There is like a small gap with it, but I lost it. So I drape it around my own boring lampshade I got from my landlord, and it gives not this like the shape you want to give it, but it gives more like an upside down bouquet, which gives it. It's on every lampshade, like in my last couple of houses, it changed shape, and that's very fascinating that the leaves and the flowers still are on the same or different places, and it still gives nice shadows on the walls.
Oh, it's a lovely idea. Thank you very much. Any other questions? I think we might all be done then. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you And if you haven't seen the show, please do go and enjoy it. The Habitat team have put on a fantastic exhibition.